To ask a question, just go ahead and use the raise hand feature on the participant side on the right-hand side. And we are going to jump directly into questions today. No opening statement from Coach. So we are going to start with Justin Spears from the Arizona Daily Star. Go ahead.
Hi, Coach. Good to see you. Normally you're getting ready for a season at this point. Just where are you at right now, and where's the team at right now in terms of just the process and moving on to 2021?
Well, you're not just moving on, right? What you are doing is we are in the process of going through really team development. What we're doing in the off season, how we've approached strength and conditioning. Our newcomers really just got involved here in the last week or so. So we've been on the field with them. We're on the field with the guys that were here for the last 2 weeks, and really a NFL style OTA model, and really have kind of transitioned into some of the new players, newcomers, not into some of them, but the 30 guys that weren't on campus up until a couple weeks ago. So, we're moving on, and I think, everybody's got to be flexible, and that's been our communication with players, with parents, with our own coaching staff, because it's, the new normal is not normal, and for fans or for anybody else. But the more that we stay engaged with our players, the more that, as an athlete, the way that we've set this thing up from a training standpoint, and the way that our university and our administration has supported our student athletes throughout the summer. I think, from the comments that you've seen of our players, whether they're concerns about playing games, their concerns about competing outside of here, I haven't seen one real complaint from our players about how our administration, our coaching staff has really taken the safety and care of our student athletes to the highest level, and they feel good about here. And because of that, I think that there's some disappointment from coaches, from players, from fans, from everybody. But I think with everything, if all things being said, I think that our players right now, with everything that's going on, are in as good a place mentally as anybody else in the country.
Michael Lev from the Arizona Daily Star. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. First question for you. What was it like having to tell the kids that they can't play this fall?
Well, I mean, it's, first you got to tell me, right? So let's start there, right? Then, it's like we're all human. So, and it affected me. I knew a little bit before the announcement happened. So, obviously some people saw me and knew something was up, because I wasn't myself that day either. But then, that's our job. So, that's, and as I told our guys, I don't know what's going to happen. I think the communication piece with our players and with their families, and you guys, have talked to a bunch of different parents and players. I think you realize that in our office and our administration and Dennis Polian and Brian Despain and Brian Johnson, our strength and conditioning, we have been as transparent as humanly possible with everything that's gone on. And I think our players and parents have understood that. Dr. Paul has done a great job and continues to do a great job in heading up, what it looks like medically, which we've deferred to. So, when that happened, that happened. And then telling players, guess what? It's not good for, it wasn't a great situation for anybody. But as I said, it's now what? Okay. And so once that decision's made, now what? And I think what we've worked on and what we're working on constantly is the plan for now what? What's that going to look like? Is there going to be a spring season? is there going to be, and if when, and if so, when is that going to happen? But what has to happen now, and I think the mindset that we've talked about here is just because you're not, so many times athletes, coaches, trainers train for that particular season. Does that make sense? So everything's put into a timeline. All right, and here's when we start. Here's what we're looking for this season. But as a competitor, what we've talked about as a coach, as a competitor, this is completely different. And so you have to continue to train and not necessarily prepare for a certain opponent, but prepare for the next opportunity that you're going to get, of which you don't know when that happens. Is that difficult? Yes. But that's what they pay us to do as coaches. But and you got to change some coaches' mindset too, right? When that happened, it's like fans, it's like everybody else. So what we are doing now is, we are in the process of working through what we're doing during the week to continue to develop our football team physically, mentally, socially, and emotionally, to be honest with you, right? Because those are all things that are working together when guys work that hard, whether they're young guys who we're working with right now who've been basically in quarantine since the first week in March, right? They haven't been to high school or junior college, they haven't been out of the house hardly, right? So this is the first time they're excited to be here. But and then you've got the other guys on the other end who may be seniors, third year higher guys are looking to get drafted that don't know what's happening. So because of that, you have to continue to prepare yourself, prepare physically, and that's what we're doing right now.
Brian
We lost
Peterson.
you, yeah, couldn't hear you.
Sorry. Brian Peterson from AZ Desert Swarm. You're up next. Brian Peterson, AZ Desert Swarm.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Coach, have you had any players in reaction to this decide that they do not want to be part of anything right now, either because of concerns about safety or because there isn't a season going on? Has that happened?
Well, I think you've seen who has opted out. They put it on Twitter.
Okay, but that's been the extent of it. No one else is wanting to be out of it.
Not that I know of.
Okay. The other thing I want to ask, how is it as a parent knowing that your team is not playing this fall, but yet your son at Oklahoma is in preparation for doing that? Is that a weird dynamic knowing that on one area it's not happening, but another the preparation is going on?
Yeah. What do you think? Right. So that's an obvious question, but listen, it's just like you have relatives, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That live all over the country. So, different places in this country right now are going through different things. And, as a matter of fact, I talk to him just about every other day or every day. Interestingly enough, just like, we have had with our players and communication and Zoom meetings, they had a team meeting Saturday, and then they had a parents meeting Saturday afternoon, which I was a part of, with their medical staff and with Lincoln and everything else. So, yeah, it's again, I think it gives, to be honest with you, I think it gives our players, as much as Jackson was around at practice and hanging out with these guys and doing stuff, I think it gives our players another perspective of where I am, because I am a parent. And I'm not just here to for just coaching football and doing some of the things that people insinuate. They know that I do have a son who's right in the thick of it, and in a league that's trying to ramp up and play. So, yeah, I think it gives me another perspective, sure, but I think it also gives our own players another perspective of where I am, and not just as a coach, but as a dad.
Thanks, Coach.
You bet.
All right, up next is Jason Barr from K-Gun 9.
Hi, Coach. Thanks for taking a couple of minutes. We see how this virus has affected some programs more than others. How much of an advantage do you think that a program is going to have over another in the spring if it does a much better job of handling this virus than, say, a program possibly with more talent?
Yeah, I don't know. This thing is so different, Jason. So I think it's going to be how you handle it from week to week, because be honest with you, 4 months ago, we went through a period where, it looked bad. Then all of a sudden it looked great, right? Just like everybody on this call, it looks like, all right, we're going to play. And then it goes 2 more weeks and you don't know what's going to happen. And then we're done. So I think, the management piece is across the board. I think it's right now the extra time with player development for new players on your staff. I mean, on your roster, how you manage the guys who, are really looking into this thing and saying, hey, do I want to play? Do I not want to play? How safe is it there? I think it's more than just that. And obviously your management of the virus. And to be honest with you, it's going to be a little bit of luck too, right? Based on where you are and what's going on outside of your campus. And so the things that you can control, as coaches say all the time, you control and tell players that, but it's more than just the management of the virus. It's going to be the management of the roster and what you're doing right now to incorporate or get your guys. Cause we didn't bring everybody back at the same time. A lot of schools did. And that, didn't really work out well early in the summer. Right. So how we brought back guys gradually, I thought was great. It was hard on our newcomers because they were the last ones here. They just got here. But I think statistically, if you go back through our numbers, it made sense. As I said, we deferred to our doctors and Dr. Paul is doing a great job with the management of this process and our administration. So our players feel safe about that, as safe as possible. And we want to continue with that. But now, with the return of students, with the return of a lot of people, there's going to be some other management issues. And how we work through that to get to spring becomes important. And as I said, you're not preparing for a specific opponent yet. What you're preparing is yourself. And that's what we're in the business of doing right now, to continue to develop our football team through skill set, but also through strength and conditioning, and team atmosphere, which basically guys did not really have for months because, we were on Zoom all the time. Right. So there's a lot of team building things that we're doing right now to get guys back together as a football team. And more than just, all right, how are we going to fight the virus? Yeah, that's big. But when you haven't been together for a long time, there's some other things that got to be accomplished to become a better football team.
And one follow-up, apologies for not knowing this, but you did mention your son. Do you by chance have any children who are playing high school sports right now in Southern Arizona?
Yeah, I got a junior at South Point. He didn't want to hear that. He's shy, so he's. So
he's a football player.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. So how do you feel about him going ahead and playing as a dad here in Southern Arizona?
Well, they're working out. So, I know that I've been on Zoom meetings with the coach there too. So it's everybody's communicating. They've got basically an 8-game schedule that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and they're planning to play. So, obviously, they're taking precautions. They're working out with a mask. They were up until they were at 6 a.m. in the morning to 6 to 8 until this week. Today's the first day of school at South Point. He is in my office at the house right now and homeschool with his Google Chrome notebook. So, we're going back and forth and talking, but it's part of it. So, and they'll work out today at 5 o'clock. So he doesn't like for me to talk about stuff like that. He's a lot different from his brothers. His brother loves for me to talk about it. So This guy just wants to blend in and play football and go to school at South Point.
All right, we will go to Jason Shear from Wildcat Authority next.
Hey, Coach, there's a lot of different scenarios for spring football. David Shaw said yesterday he'd like to see it as soon as January. What would spring football ideally look like to you?
It's different for me, Jason, just because, as I said, our preparation is going to be to get us better through this process. So that, and I think it's hard to say to make that kind of plan right now based on what we've seen over the last couple months. Does that make sense? So what we would like was to play football and play next week, right? Or start, but that didn't happen. So when you ask a coach what you'd like to see, that's fine. But what can really happen is going to be a different scenario. So do the kids want to play? The majority of them do. I really believe that, particularly if they know it's about as safe environment as it can be. But from our standpoint, because of the way this virus has really gone up and down, and because of, quite frankly, the lack of respect for the virus by a lot of people in the community, you don't know what's going to happen. And, because of the protocols and the precautions that we're taking and have taken on our own campus, and our players have done a great job with that, that's one thing. But as you start to add more and more people to the mix and the community and everything else, that you don't know what's going to happen with where the virus is. So, from my standpoint right now, we're working on, with our working group, with Dennis Polian's working on a working group through the Pac-12, myself and coaches have a meeting tomorrow. We're talking about what that looks like. And I think the important part is what it looks like in Tucson. The challenge is what it looks like in Tucson right now, and particularly on our campus, which is pretty good on our campus, may look different in Los Angeles County or in Oregon. And so the challenge is what may be okay in the Bay Area for our particular situation might be a lot different challenge in Southern California or in Oregon, which we've already, I think people have already discussed that. So, what does it look like for me? We just got to be ready to go. And if we go, we go. If we don't, then I think there's got to be a conversation about what scenario that means for our players' eligibilities, whether they're seniors, whether they're first-year guys, and what that looks like. So there's a lot of conversations that are coming down the road, not just, what spring football looks like to play.
All right, we will go to David Kelly from KVOA. David?
Hey, Coach, in my conversation with Edgar Barola about his situation, one of the things he was adamant about was the fact that he thought that his injury last year was misdiagnosed by the medical staff. And I was wondering what your protocol is with players who have an injury, don't like what they're hearing from the U of A medical team, and want to seek that second opinion, how you counsel them about that process.
Yeah, we've always counseled wherever I have been as a head coach, including here, that players have the right to a second opinion all the time. And at no point have I ever said anything other than that. So, the conversation, the piece, if he felt that way, and we've had a number of other players that, I'm not going to go into and name them, but we had a young player from here that ended up having surgery. He's back with us and did seek a second opinion and did ask for other, look for some other things. So at no one point have I not ever said that or alluded to that. I think our players feel comfortable with that, and that opportunity is always open to them.
And just to follow, what are your thoughts on the We Are United movement? How are you counseling your players that want to be involved with that and that whole aspect of it?
Well, I'll say this, David. I haven't heard much in the last week, right? Have you?
Not much, no.
Exactly. So I go back to this. As we've talked about this, as we've talked about it as a team, we've talked about it with current players. Obviously, we have a player on the media group who, as they said, right, are players who have opted out. I think it's been very clear from their standpoint that they are extremely happy with how they've been treated here and the safety issues, the safety measures that we put in place. I think their concern was about playing in games where maybe that wasn't the same situation. And as I've told our players, right, my job, our administration's job, first and foremost, is to provide the safest environment for you that's possible. And I think our players feel that way. Now, can we control what's going on all over the place? I can't do that. And I think that's been the challenge with some of the players' concerns about some things that have gone on with some of their friends across the league. And, you know, I think they voiced that opinion, and I think that's being addressed. I think some of the issues that were brought up originally, I think Commissioner Scott addressed them pretty quickly later on, because there's some misinformation out there just about scholarships, about scholarship money and being able to come back to school, what that looks like, all the kinds of different things that were in that first document that were, a lot of those things were addressed later that week. Were there other issues? You bet there are other issues. There's always issues. But what we try to do is address those. And as I said, you cannot have enough communication. And I think it's been fairly obvious from our players' communication, even with the opt-outs, that they feel good about what we're doing for them here. And that's our jobs here administratively as coaches and everything else. And then the other stuff we have to work through as a league.
All right, we'll go back to Michael Lev with the Daily Star. Michael?
Thanks. Two things for you here, Coach. You mentioned spring football, no specifics yet, of course. But in general, what do you think is the viability of playing a shortened season in the spring and then coming back and playing something of a normal season in the fall? And what are your biggest concerns about that?
Well, I think, there's two things. We were going to have, if it was going to be a fall season, it was going to be shortened anyway, right? Either way, it's a shortened season, and then what does that look like? Obviously the time that you are involved in spring football, which is usually, March, April, right? Something like that, and you say, well, you've got 15 days, but most guys spread that out over the course of a month, maybe a month or so. So, there's that fact that you're not going to have spring football. So, does a season replace that with basically 2 months that start earlier? That becomes more viable when you look at it that way. Because realistically, if a guy's playing in a game on a Saturday, you're going to play 60, 70 snaps. Most guys don't play 75 snaps, right, on Saturday. So, there's pluses and minuses to it. I think, you start looking at different things. That's why I said the eligibility issue is going to be at the forefront. I think that conversation needs to be had and needs to be solved, because, just being honest with you, players are going to make decisions. And about this year, with the concern is just being honest with, what if there's a spike and I only get to play 2 games? What does that look like? even right now. So, there's a lot of questions to be answered. And, for me to say, hey, look, let's go do this right now. I'm just not ready to do that yet, just based on, what we've seen in the last 4 weeks.
What do you say to players or their parents who look around, they see that the Big 12 is moving forward, the ACC, the SEC, and they question the Pac-12 decision, or maybe they ask you, like, why can't we play?
Well, I think that communication has been going on. I know that communication, our communication with our particular team and our parents has been going on, and that concern has been there from both sides. Does that make sense? And so, everything that we've done has been, as I said, with player safety in front of it. And let me say this, Mike, today people are saying they're going to play. Just like we came out with a schedule and a week later we were done. Let's wait a couple weeks and see what happens. Okay.
All right, we have time for one final question, and we'll go to Jason Shear with Wildcat Authority for the final question.
Hey, Coach, this is kind of a loaded question, but how does this whole thing impact recruiting?
Like, what do you mean?
Just your ability, like the dead period extended, but you still have the early signing and not being able to go visit recruits or have kids on campus. How does that kind of change your approach?
Well, we've had a lot of virtual visits, and which I know that you've been on top of that with guys that have been, we've got a different theme every day. We've got a lot of guys we've done, I think our staff and Cody Moore, I think we've done as good a job as anybody with our virtual visits. We've got, I think we're right at 20 commitments right now. We've got two really good ones already for 22. So for us, in some ways we've split up what we're doing. Not as much football. We've got as much football as we can in the morning with strength and conditioning, get on the field with our players. But we've also broken it up, and I think it's given us the opportunity to really delve into recruiting over the last 2 months. And I think you've seen some of the benefits that have come out of it. And again, as I said before, it's going to be staffs that can adapt and adjust because it's not the same. And with virtual visits, and I don't know. To be honest with you, how you're going to have official visits, before the end of the year, or even early in the spring, or unofficial visits based on, guys coming on campus, not being tested. What does that look like? So I think for some guys, the guys who are committed, they feel good about where they are. I think the early signing date is still a great opportunity for a young man in a time that is uncertain. And if they're certain, right, and they want to sign, then I think that gives the family and themselves some relief in this time. And again, Jason, if just because it's early signing date, there's going to be another date, they don't have to sign then if they're not sure. So I think the early signing date this year is probably as important as any year, just because of the uncertainty of things that are going on and the uneasiness that's out there for high school players and JUCO transfers. So, that's coming up because we're already in the middle of August, right? So getting to the end of August, it's going to come up here fast. And so recruiting is just as fast and furious as it's always been. It's just being done in a different manner.
All right, Coach, thanks for your time. Everybody, thanks for joining us today. And please let me know if you need anything else.